Welcome back to the Bruce Poinsette Show. Normally during the B block, we like to lighten things up a little bit, but look, Ado, we gotta talk about these grifters, man.
Yeah.
And I get it. Don't get me wrong. We live in scam culture. Especially during times of like a messed up economy, we gravitate towards people who are, making something out of nothing. Not always, legally. I mean, one of the most prolific scammers of all time was most recently the president of the United States.
So, yes.
We know how far this goes. And as such, I shouldn't be surprised that people romanticize grifters, even in social justice spaces. That said, there are some effects.
As it goes.
So even if we don't mess with the grift, I feel like a lot of us are, we're very live and let live people. We don't, we might see something happening, but if you're not messing with us, you're not messing with our family, you're not messing with our loved ones, we're good. Like, there's only so much you can do in this world.
If you don't mind me asking before we go any deeper, for those who may not know, what is a grifter, Bruce?
Grifter is basically another word for a scammer. In what we're going to be talking about today, specifically in social justice spaces, it's someone who they use the rhetoric, they latch on to movements, usually incredibly narcissistic, and basically they co-opt, whether it be movements or anything else, for themselves under the guise of, the empowerment of the people, and to be clear, usually they're not super transparent all the time. A lot of them, they're mixed bags. They give you some good things. They do some good things, but they also do some disastrous things.
Yeah,
that make it kind of harmful. Yeah, very obvious what they're actually doing, and then it becomes a matter of holding them accountable. Which, again, as we talked about, it doesn't really happen. So with that, when we talk again about this social justice space and we look at, grifting, like we live in Oregon, it is something like 86% white. Portland maybe slightly less, but still very, very, very white. So most of the people who are, on the other end of the grift in this space, it's white people. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of us, when we see it, it's kind of like a form of entertainment almost. Yeah. It's like, the same white people you see in a meeting who tell you, they give you all the talking points. Like, I want to uplift Black voices. I want to be a better ally. You see those people, sometimes you roll your eyes at some of those people who are clearly insincere. And then when you see them, getting caught up by the grifters, it's just like, not my problem.
Good times.
Yeah.
Good times for everyone, I
say. Get that. Yeah. I get that. But the problem with grift is, in order to sustain it, eventually you're going to get past just grifting easy, people who are easy to root against, for lack of better terms.
Yes.
Eventually you're going to have to step your game up to sustain. And here in Portland, that is no different. And let's keep it real. I'm not gonna go out of my way to name names, but if you've been in this space, especially like the activist social justice space for several years or so, we all know who the grifters are out here. And there's certain signs. Again, usually if you see this like cult of personality building, and except all the followers around this person are all, I just want to be a better ally white people, and you don't see cosigns from other Black and brown people.
Grifter.
I'm not gonna say necessarily a grifter, but it's an important data point. You know what I mean? And again, like especially post 2020 George Floyd protests, for lack of better terms, the market opened up. Like, there were a lot of people who wanted to be on the right side of history. I'm sure they're good intention for the most part.
Right.
But also, you have a lot of white people in Oregon who they don't actually, like, they're not in community with anyone else meaningfully.
Mm-hmm.
They, you know, they're very, how can I put this nicely? They walk into these spaces very helplessly. That's nice, right?
Yeah.
You know?
You know,
When you ask them, what's your reason for being here?
I just want to be better.
I just want to help, but please don't make me feel bad, okay? Please, I just want to. So anyone who can, kind of feed that, kind of, feed into people's, sense of justice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we recorded this Batman segment the other way, or also today, but it's kind of like feeding into this Batman complex in people that they can be, this force for justice.
White saviors.
Yeah. And again, there's a lot of interpretations of that or instances of that where, it's not the worst thing. It shouldn't be where it ends.
Right.
But, you can get some good things from there. Unfortunately, when you're talking about grifters, that's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to catch the people right where they are, where it's like, do you listen to black people? Do you have any black people in your life? No? Well, don't worry. I am here.
I'm here to be that one.
And I will lead you to black liberation.
Oh.
Just listen to me, right? And it's, the situation again, if it just stopped there, it would be one thing. But the reality is, with a lot of these grifters, they also feed into the state's anti-blackness in this weird way, where it's like their whole business model around black liberation is built on stepping on other black people, other black and brown people to get there, lifting themselves up in the eyes of their mostly white following. So you can get those donations, so you can get that, that support. And weaponizing a lot of these white followers against them in the process, which gets a lot of us, other black and brown people in this space, it ends up pitting us against each other. And there's actual consequences.
Yes.
And again, I want to stress, like, a lot of this comes from, just the dynamics out here. And how could I put this again? I'll try and put this nicely, but in 2020, or post 2020, I should say, the white zombie market is fertile. Was that not putting it nicely? So what do I mean by that? Like, again, you have white people who want to be on the right side of history, and they've heard some of the phrases have kind of gone through. Like when people say, listen to black people, or like listen to black women, or getting more specific, listen to black trans women. They're like, yes, you're right. But what do they mean in practice? I've gone to 1 or 2 marches. I saw this person speak. So they're black. They must speak for black people.
Yes.
And I'm going to parrot everything they say.
This is my figure now.
Yes. And it's like, no, that's not, when we say listen to black people, like people, not person. Especially if someone is actually putting themselves out there as if they speak, like, you want to talk about warning signs. When someone poses themselves as speaking for the black community, there's your sign.
Sign number 2.
Yeah. Right. And just stop for a minute, because there were some good things from this, like amplifying this idea of listening to black people more. I do appreciate that.
Of course.
Normalizing talking points around, or even just talking about reparations. I like that. Talking about, normalizing the idea of, we should really pay black people. We should, that's good. Even like this idea of centering those most marginalized. Like, I'm part of this group, Imagine Black, where they use a black queer feminist lens, which is this idea of when we're dealing with these issues around social justice, again, centering the most marginalized. Like, great. And it is good to proliferate that.
Yes.
But again, when you're dealing with people who they're getting a bunch of knowledge all at once, and they're just scrambling around trying to, again, be the good people they want to be,
right?
What does it become? a grifter's paradise.
Grifter
Like,
heaven.
it's no secret that, if you have an army of loyal white followers, especially in America, you can go pretty far.
Mm-hmm.
And grifters realize that. And they realize, in a weird way, like 2020 was an opportunity to go on tour for a lot of these people. Like, there's
Grifter World
crowds
Tour.
and crowds of these white people looking for, that black voice that they can listen to and they can trust.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, what happened? You had people who, they were great, especially those who are, charismatic. They've got all the rhetoric of black liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's going to appeal to people. That's going to inspire some people. And I'm not even mad at people like fundraising and stuff from that. Again, get your money. Like, this is work. I absolutely believe in that. Like, you're not just going out there. I don't believe in martyring yourself for this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always that next step further to keep the grift going, where you're also, building this cult of personality.
Mm-hmm. The narcissism involved.
All the narcissism, again, also at the expense of other black people.
Yes.
Especially peers in the space, usually in direct, like, in a way, like competition, or at least in a way of actually downing others to lift yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
Where it becomes like, what is this about? Like, can the people following this not see that this is also happening? Like, if you're saying you got to listen to black people, but not that one. Yeah. Not that one. Nope.
Only this one.
Only me. Right? Like, if you're watching that, you can't put two and two together and be like, this seems off.
Yeah.
Isn't it off that all these other black people who occupy this space and do this work will not, they're not co-signing this? Like, we all know each other. Isn't that weird? Isn't it? No one asked. In some cases, you have these, how do I put this? Especially when, like, tension, because, like, this really comes to light, black people are not a monolith. So when we have tensions with each other in this space, when we have disagreements, whether it's over personal stuff or just over tactics,
mm-hmm.
and those play out publicly, what happens? Especially when you've built up a white following.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, it becomes entertainment for people.
It does.
We talk about becoming entertainment watching the grift happen, but then it flips on us and we become the entertainment.
Once again.
Except it's amplified because it's thousands of white people on Twitter or IG or Facebook who are jumping in and taking sides.
Right.
And you have, like, it was kind of dispiriting in a lot of ways, especially like 2020, 2021, when some of these arguments would break out and you'd see people accusing other people of being COINTELPRO. Just quick history lesson for people. COINTELPRO was a counterintelligence program used by the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover during, first on as an anti-communist movement, and then it really blew up with the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. And the idea was to infiltrate and basically destroy these civil rights movements. And it included spying, and included having, people go in and sow dissent, even include having people not so, but actually use violence and assassination. Like, it did a number on a lot of people. They spied on Martin Luther King Jr. They spied on Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
They, tried to start wars within the Black Panthers. And there's so much more. So, when people just kind of, to bring it back to now, watching people just kind of casually throw that around and be like, you're COINTELPRO because I disagree with you. And I was just like, who taught you this?
This is so negative.
But then also, I guess it makes sense. Like, even if you're not, part of some operation, if the main function or if the end function is still, okay, you're sowing tension within the community, you're, basically throwing a lot of these plans of this organizing off kilter,
right?
Whether on purpose or not. Is it not the same effect? You know? And especially if most of that is targeting, again, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it just seems to continuously be taking down Black and brown activists in particular.
Right.
You know, at the very least, you could be like, seems like something's wrong. Seems like something's off. But it continues. And like, again, because we have this whole live and let live thing, and because we know the history of COINTELPRO, we know the history of just in general, you know, especially in a place like Oregon, Black people being pitted against each other.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us go out of our way, even in these instances where it's like, oh, this is clearly wrong, not to like down these people, like at least make a public display of downing these people.
Right.
Because we know that'll be exploited. And we know how, you know, other systems work. Like, if, you know, someone becomes a pariah, especially if you're a Black person who becomes a pariah, there's a lot less support for you than, you know, a white pariah out here.
Yes.
So people are very careful. People are very, very kind and complimentary on this stuff, even when they don't have to be, even when they're directly negatively affected. Trust me, I've been one of them. But, and I understand why, but it persists, and you see these same people. It doesn't matter how many times publicly. Like, it's one thing if this is behind the scenes, but some of these people out here, they're like, they've been on prolific runs in public of the grift of, you know, ooh, this thing spectacularly burns down and everyone sees it. This other thing spectacularly burns down and everyone sees it. This other thing, and everyone sees it. But then, you know, the white zombies are still out there like,
this is my person.
Yeah. And it's wild. And it's like, what do you do about that? Like, sometimes I'm at a loss. And, you know, I said I wasn't gonna name names. I guess technically I'm still not, but I do want to use one specific example because people are always gonna be like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Let's hear it.
So, yeah, during the 2020 elections for city commissioner, you had Black man Mingus Maps running against white woman Chloe Eudaly. Now, Mingus Maps was well known to be endorsed by the police union before he ran, as he was running. Eudaly, on the other hand, was a known tenants' rights advocate. Yet somehow, some very influential voices in sort of the activist community took to Mingus Maps and basically lifted him up as like not just the Black candidate, obviously he's the Black candidate in this issue, but like the candidate for Black people, and made it like a Black empowerment, you know, moment, an opportunity by electing him. And, you know, people called it out at the time of being like, no, he's endorsed by the police union. Some of you are literally doing marches talking about abolish the police. How can you
support him? Yeah.
How can you be endorsing this person? And not just over some random person, over a tenants' rights advocate.
Yes.
A proven tenants' rights advocate during a pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, it was wild. It was wild. It seemed pretty transparent. It seemed ridiculous at the time, but it worked. He won. And since he's won, what has he done? Everything you'd expect. Anytime there's been a comment about the police, here's a bad one. And there's an opportunity to, you know, raise the police budget. They did it. And to be fair, it's not just him. The city council voted unanimously. And even people like the police union hates Joanne Hardesty, but she voted for it. So it's not all Mingus. But again, when there's this opportunity in this election and people who knew better lifted this person endorsed by the police union up while also marching for, you know, not
Black
just police
lives.
accountability, not just police reform, but in some cases, abolition.
Yes.
Those two don't mix. And we all saw it with our own eyes.
Yes, we did.
And it's like, at least, you know, mistakes happen. We're all young out here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not all of us.
We're learning though.
Yeah,
we're
not
learning.
some of these people who did this, but we make mistakes out here, right? And that's fine. But if people don't say anything, don't take any account, they just get real quiet about it, and their followers act as if it never happened. I don't know what's going to happen in the next elections. What's going to happen when this opportunity comes up again? Because it's not like it's the first time you've had, a black candidate who's basically, been very open about being, a part of that system or being supportive of that system. It's not the first time that's happened. It's not the first time you've had a black candidate who's been lifted up as like, by some people, as like this image of social justice when he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it happens all the time. But if we don't learn from it, if we talk about we're in this time of awakening,
mm-hmm.
at some point we gotta like awaken. Yeah. But it continues, and I wish I had an answer.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, a lot of times I think to myself, you know what? It's all you can't beat them, join them, right?
Right.
Like, who am I? Why am I trying to, what is the point of trying to do the right thing out here? Like, think about how much money one could make if you just, embraced just taking full advantage of this white zombie market.
Correct.
And clearly, as aforementioned, grifters have proven, it's very easy to do it without, in plain sight.
Yes.
With virtually no consequences. And no one across the board cares.
No one's complaining.
So, why shouldn't I? Ada, what if I were a grifter for a day? So, it's the 3rd of the month, everyone, which means it's time for reparations. To me, your personal revolutionary black friend. Remember when you marched with me 2 years ago? Didn't you love that feeling? The adrenaline? Those bad white people at brunch giving you those mean stares and glares as you bravely stood up for black lives and got your steps in? Remember that? Well, where have you been since? Have you uplifted any black voices today? Have you? Have you given to my Cash App yet today? Have you? Have you paid reparations to me? Well, don't let these politicians fool you. Don't let these House Negro nonprofits, and yes, I said House Negro. If I wasn't real, would I call them House Negroes for you white people? Would I? No. Stop letting them take your money without giving you real justice. These people, they're ops. You can tell. You can tell. You want to know how you can tell? How many of them mess with me? None of them?
They're ops.
Yeah, they're scared of me because I speak the truth. Because I want real black liberation, not reform, not change. I want liberation. I want freedom for my people. I want reparations today in my Cash App. All I need is your help and your donations. Because remember, I am your personal revolutionary black friend. Power to the people. Cash App in the description.